Okay, if I say the word golem to you, most of you probably think of Lord of the Rings and this person who used to be a man, who they describe in the story as not long ago having been much like the hobbits themselves, but due to a drastic want or need for a certain thing, it changed who he was to his very core. And there's a story and a moral in that people sometimes just see rapidly, easily, but falter on across. But there's also a bunch of older tales. And where does this word golem come from? And this concept. Now, we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and some of my stuff and everything, and I'm telling you that it surrounds us all, and you're not really aware of it. And during this little thing, I'll make you aware of another form of it in itself. You look at this zombie here, or this clay statue that this is shown here, and this is a depiction of Rabbi Lowe. Yep, yeah. Oh, so what is this creature here? Well, it's a protective creature. And it's got that dent in its forehead, that little symbol that's in its forehead. What it's missing is a sacred gemstone that were supposedly put into their head. Now, this gemstone was trapping someone else's soul in it. So, effectively, to do this correctly, you would have to have had somebody's soul trapped into this gemstone and then put it into him, and then it would become basically the brain of this inanimate object. And we can see this all the way into a modern day where they take this idea of a cyborg guy and they just basically chop off your head and put it on a robot and you're going to live forever. Right? You know, concepts people have of rebirth and things like this that goes on. So let's look into this and let's see if I can do this correct justice for you and show you much more connections than you would originally think of. You see this priest here is wearing a mitre hat, M-I-T-R-E, mitre. Meter, a mitred hat. It's a little more like a Phrygian cap and kind of like the one the Pope wears that looks more like a fish head, like the Dogons and things like that, but it's sure not the little cap that you're familiar with, is it? Well, there was a time not too long before this whenever priests were even referred to as magi. And we know nowadays that that's the word magician and where it comes from. And there were a time, like Dungeons and Dragons, if you will, were a time where these priests that you're familiar with were using magic. Yep, and they used it to help convince the masses of powers that be and so on like that. Very simply, you can take some type of flint that's been churned up and cast it over fire and it sparkles and you can say words and do all kinds of things. What we know nowadays, the disappearing pig trick was just a trick, right? You remember watching Willow, then he finally is able to do it for real, but it hurts his hand and all these things and so on. And this clay creature that's here is bound by iron, and he's being held together by iron, for he's starting to crack apart. Can't hold together like a clay statue would. And so what has clay got to do with it? What is this? Let's get into it. Golums are a legendary clay beast created to protect Jewish people and some others around this same area during the time. The Gothic horror novel Frankenstein is one of the most well-known stories in which man tries to play God by attempting to manufacture a living being. We're familiar with this, right? To bring someone back to life, to make a servant, perhaps. A similar story, that of the golem, exists in Jewish folklore and legend. A lot of people don't know about Jewish folklore and legends because it gets hidden, because if you look into that, then that makes you question the Bible again. But if you read the stories of the Bible, there's all types of fanciful tales of talking donkeys and a talking snake, and a woman grows from a rib and eats from a magic tree because a talking snake tells her to and stuff. But people just seem to blend right on past that. But it's a similar story, albeit with some obvious differences. For instance, the Frankenstein monster is probably popularly depicted as an amalgamation of different body parts from different cadavers, while the golem is said to be made from clay. Additionally, it was science that gave life to Frankenstein monster, whereas the golem is said to have been given life by mystical or magical means. Now, what I always thought was weird about the Frankenstein monster is they had the stitches on his arms and things, and that was led to believe that they had gone through all this different stuff and put together different arms and different things. And if it's a person's body and you can reanimate it, there's no reason to have done the arms or done this or done that, supposedly, But in the tale, if you read the whole book thing off of it, the arms are from a murderer and all this, and it gets recreated again and echoed, which you're going to see that this echoes quite a bit, and it even echoed in the Lord of the Rings in Golum in a different way. But you see this echo keep showing up at different times and kind of re-showing itself in this story of ancient times, but it leads back to old Jewish folklore and a time of magic. Now, people think that such as zombies and things like that can't exist, but one of the first recollections we have of anybody being dead and coming back to life, like Lazarus and so on, are in the Bible. And even in the New Testament, supposedly, if you'll read the Gospels, only one of them mentions it, but they say that whenever Jesus resurrected, all of the saints and all of the past priests had resurrected, and the dead walked the streets, and everybody freaked out and they were amazed. When it says this, the only thing is if that actually happened, there'd be a hell of a lot of people writing about it, and no one ever did. But that's another story, right? I think I've been there before, but just to tie this idea all together and this ideal of rebirth and situations. But again, we look at mummies and how they are trying to cause this rebirth in this situation. But whenever I was a kid, most of the mummies stories, and you'll probably remember them this way, was a guardian. The mummy wasn't actually the king, was he? He was just some guardian thing, and if you disturb the tomb, and he comes to life and comes after you slowly, and you can run fast, and then there he is, and you can run fast, and then there he is, and it's kind of that thin man idea, or whatever you want to say about it, but he's going to get you. Which is kind of strange, because that's not what goes on even in the tombs. So whenever you have this depiction people grew up with, it's like a deviant of it. Well, there's a lot of that goes on, but it still echoes. You see that? Well, the golems in the Bible. Well, the word golem is said to appear once in the Bible in Psalms 139:16, and it means shapeless mass or unfinished substance in Hebrew. According to a Talmudic legend, Adam was a golem for the first 12 hours of his existence, for the night coming into day and then coming forth by day, just like in the Egyptians' things, and how life had come into him, indicating that he was a body without a soul at first. In another legend, the prophet Jeremiah is said to have made a golem. Some people believe these legends regarding the creation of golems are merely symbolic in nature, and many refer to a person's spiritual awakening. But that's kind of weird. Well, he set up a golem for these things. Well, that's like setting up an idol. And so they have to take that idea out of it because they can't say that because it's, yeah, okay. Disinfected. Go back to work safely. Man, companies like that are coming out. So you can see this depiction here, and this is a different aspect of it, for this is somebody calling something into being. And he's using magic books and symbols and polypentagrams and hexagrams and all kinds of stuff. And he has rode upon the sky in the face of smoke and created a golem. And the words of God are written on his forehead. Now, people say, well, no, this is whenever you get somebody so dumbfounded by what you've been telling them that they believe anything and do your will and your bidding for you. Knock, knock. So you can see this, and steeped with the seven and all that. But a rabbi creates a golem is what that depiction is called. There are others who interpret the stories of the golem literally and believe that it's possible to create such creatures. In the Sefer Yizrah, meaning Book of Creation or Formation, there are instructions explaining the creation of golems. Yep. Several rabbinic commentaries on this book have provided different explanations on how these directions should be carried out. In most versions, the golem is first formed into a shape resembling a human being. So when we see things like voodoo dolls, that has something to do with it. But that's a little Ken doll and little bitty. But see, if you take, and you can get a fingernail or some of those person's hair and try to stick it in its head and then do the magic thing over it. Now this becomes that. And if you wave it over the fire, Indiana Jones screams, right? But how can you get a bigger golem? Well, shortly he's going to have to fight that big old son of a bitch in the movie there. And he's drank that secret potion and done these things. And he's led the stray and blah, blah, blah. And he's going to have to fight him. And he's the guardian, if you will. So it's another little echoing, you know, the guy that he fights right in front of the plane and goes through the whole deal. You could say that works in a different way. But now we're talking about clay and forming a human shape into being and so on. And the Bible tells you that. It tells you that it made people out of clay. And that breath, you put the breath of life into it and created a human. And so this is a golem, right? But it's Adam. But then he gave him something extra. He was the Frankenstein that worked for God. And that was so cool, he took a rib out of him, and somehow that grew into a woman, and she ate from a magic tree because a talking snake told her to. But that's a different tale. But here we find that making out of clay, and so you're trying to play God. Make no mistakes about it. And so what they're doing is something that's been found in the Sumerian tale, where Enki and a goddess go together and use the blood of Kingu along with clay and create man. Well, this is echoed through time. You see it echoed back in your Bible because they know the story. And you can see this same concept in the Greeks, where a man is formed out of clay. And they have the same depiction and concept in Egypt. And so when we see things and all these are pagan and this is real and all that goes on, and whenever you look deep into it, it's all the same damn thing, but they really just kind of culminated it into one. And it took 2,000 years for us to figure out that. And not really. There's been a lot of people that, you know, as soon as actually books came out, it's amazing how many sects started sprouting out of that because of their differing beliefs and just the fact that they read through the Bible finally once, as opposed to only being told certain stories. For I've talked to people that have been to church every Sunday of their life and they don't know a lot of stories that I could tell them. And I go, "Boy, it's right here. It says it right here. They never tell you this? The talking donkey thing?" This isn't about a talking donkey, but this is a movie, and I can't show it to you. For I did one about Golums about 2.5 years ago at Halloween as one of my little Halloween deals in Frankenstein, and I put it all together, but I showed a couple of movie clips and the old mummy and stuff like that. No, it was only 10 seconds a piece because it was just them coming to life and trying to do this ritual way before, and so I clipped it together. But oh no, that got vanned real quick. So just going back on it again though here. So in a lot of these tales, there's just all kinds of stuff. And in my D&D things, we had to make a golem for somebody one time. So what did they do? Well, they the problem is that they had to help out this place, but it was pretty easy to do. But the village was pretty much bereft of anybody worth fighting, just farmers and blah blah blah. So we went and we saved them out, and then the priest there said that they should create a golem, and that would protect them then on, and you could go on. Sounds like a great idea, but then we had to go and get the crap that makes a golem for him and do the whole thing. And then we made a golem. And it was basically like this big oaf guy, and he'll do anything you want. Well, lo and behold, we go off and we do 3 or 4 little treks back, and then all of a sudden there's trouble in that town again. What the hell's going on? Well, Frankenstein. And so we go through that idea. And so this golem was created that's pretty much an idiot, like a village idiot, if you will, is not aware, and he only has feelings and instincts and things like that. And he goes by a river and sees a little girl of virgin age, beautiful little girl, and she picked flowers and give it to him, and he sees the pretty in that moment, and just in the instinct of everything, he tries to have her. And in that process, she starts screaming, and next thing you know, he doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't like that screaming, and he chokes her and kills her, casts her into the river, and so on. And there are stories of village idiots like that in the Celtic lands. And the story ends in a weird, odd way, for it ends with a Burning Man concept where they took and put him in a wicker man and then burnt the whole thing. And there is another essence seed of the Frankenstein story. And it's ending. But it never ended, right? You saw how it never ended, and then the Dracula got with him and all these other things, right? So, how to bring a golem to life? There are several ways given to bring a golem to life. One way, for example, of its creator were to walk or dance around it while saying a combination of letters from the Hebrew alphabet and the secret name of God, Yahweh. In another version, the letters Aleph, Mem, and Tav, those letters combine to form the word Emet, meaning truth. There are no vowels, so are required to be written on Gollum's forehead in order to give him the life. Or this whole concept goes with a gemstone and they put it in their forehead. More on that in a minute. A third way of bringing Gollum to life is to write the name of God on a parchment and stick it into the Gollum's arm or mouth. And this is another coming forth by day and the opening of the mouth type ceremony, and you're really trying to have somebody come back to life. And the Egyptians kept doing it. Nobody ever came back to life. Well, they're not coming back to life here. They're coming to life in the afterlife. And that's the symbology of it all. But we can see this same golem idea in the warrior protector mummy, But we come to find out really that mummies don't do anything like that, and the real problem is something else that's in Dungeons and Dragons, like yellow mold and rust mold and these things that go on. That you can open up that tomb, and as soon as it hits breath, those spores come out, and it will kill you. So there's a lot more to it, and the curse of the mummy is quite a different thing than when it's depicted, of course. But this whole ceremony here, where you write the name of God on a parchment and you do your thing, if you look deep into some of these, some of them go extremely deep, and then others say they didn't work because they didn't do it right, and you have to use human skin and make a parchment out of it. And you have to do this and that and chant, and you burn a candle while you're dancing and singing and chanting the whole freaking time. And right whenever the candle goes out naturally at the very bottom and the smoke comes off of it, you suck in deep and you breathe, saying the name of God under your breath into its face, and then its eyes pop open and it's the golem. And now you have control of it, but you have to assume control and control him like a control wizard goes, right? And things. And so now you're controlling zombies, if you will, in a different weird way. And in D&D there indeed is zombies and skeletons and everything, but then there's this special juju zombie. Juju. Yeah. You know, bad juju. Juju zombies have that little stone in their forehead usually. Sometimes they'll have a circlet that looks like a little crown thing onto them with it embedded into it. A lot of other people would say that that stone is inside their head. Whenever you bust their head, you see a stone come out that's glowing and dims real quick. But they're controlled by that trapped soul in a stone again. So we look at something like this, and it's really just a living statue. Like statues can come back to life. And we have that in so many tales. One that comes to mind is the Clash of the Titans and Perseus, and how she said that she is more fair than the goddess herself, and all of a sudden the statue, where they projected it onto her, comes to life, and she taught scrap to her and everything, boom, and then the head comes off and the whole temple and thing comes down. But there have been a lot more tales, and I'm sure you can remember a lot to yourself right now, but this idea here just looks like that Urfa man from San Lurfa, pretty much, but he doesn't have his hands across his belly, but he's a big old guy, and they have big old hands onto him, and yeah, so the golem is first formed in the shape of a human being, illustrated by golem by Philip Samaria, a Hebrew word for truth. One of the names of God is written on his forehead. The famous Prague golem legend. One of the most famous golem stories is about Rabbi Judah Loew, Ben Bezalel. An important Talmudic scholar, Jewish mystic, and philosopher. This rabbi is believed to have lived at the end of the 16th century in Prague, which was then a part of the Holy Roman Empire. At this time, the empire was ruled by Rudolph II, the red-nosed. Oh, snap. Although Rudolph was an enlightened emperor, the Jews of Prague were subjected to an anti-Semitic attacks. In order to protect the Jewish quarter, the rabbi created a golem. As the golem possessed incredible strength, it also helped out with physical labor in the rabbi's household and the synagogue. Additionally, the golem was given a special necklace made of deerskin and decorated with mystic signs. This necklace made the golem invisible. See, it's just, well, where is this golem? Oh, well, he's invisible. But if you keep talking crap to me, I'm going to have 8 people come beat you up, and then you're going to tell them, everybody, that it was one big golem that did it, or we'll beat you up again. Another version of the story states that a Jewish hating priest tried to incite the Christians of Prague against the Jews near Easter during the spring of 1580. As a result, the Rabbi Loew created the golem to protect his people during the Easter season. Yeah, all you need is just during the Easter season, and then after that, all the everything just goes away. Everybody's mad about Easter. Well, we all celebrate Easter in different ways. In fact, these people did. So it's not much of a problem, is there? Well, there can be, definitely. But there's a telling of that, and it said that it had happened. Now here they show the golem, and it's written on his chest and not his forehead. And he's just a big, he is Mr. Hyde. Right? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. What would he do if he could turn himself into this, or make a Superman, the Thing, Hulk, Frankenstein's monster? That's Rabbi Lowe with the Golem. While the Golem succeeds in protecting the Jews, the story is a less than happy ending. The Golem grew stronger and stronger, but it became increasingly destructive as well. Instead of doing good deeds, the Golem began to run amok and threatened innocent lives. This is the concept that is shown in the Frankenstein tale. Again, echoes and echoes and echoes. But instead of doing it in smoke and things and out of the magic and having smoke and mirrors do it, electricity took over. For at this time, people are studying electricity like crazy, and people have already figured out if they touch electricity to a frog's leg, it jerks, and they can even make people jerk, and they can do it to their faces and make them twist and jerk in weird ways and everything just by slight currents being put to them, because our muscles work off this same type of current. And you don't think anything good comes out of this, but seriously, in a weird roundabout way, that's how we shock somebody back to life. Defibrillator. It literally, from a long, drawn-out way, just like Buck Rogers in the 25th century had lasers, and then people said, well, how could we do that? And somebody said, you could do it like this, and then they powered it, and hey, they got a real laser. Nothing you could put a power supply into a little gun and have, but nowadays with the modern batteries and the types of lasers they have a laser that can be a handheld thing, looks like a gun, and shoot, although it only gets 1 or 2 rounds off, and the last round doesn't really do it, but it'll burn a hole through metal. So in a human, it'll zap a little hole right through you. And if you had a way to plug that in somehow to a generator device, zut, 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 you could keep going. I remember when I was a kid, they had this laser, it powered up off chemicals and stuff. They had made it to where it'd really take out a tank in a heartbeat. And they could focus this thing, because it's a laser, so well, and they put them up in planes, and they're saying, man, they could just take somebody out in a plane, they could target him and zot, and just burn you in a matter of seconds. But everybody freaked out about that, but the real usage in this is to zots a missile in the air or anything else. But hey, just like many weapons, it has more than one usage. And in fact, this golem concept had more than one usage. But the electricity that sparked, it's alive, to happen in Frankenstein works today. And you can imagine somebody having somebody die in front of them and shocking them and them coming back to life. And how incredible of a thing that is. Also in the tale, notice that his name is Frankenstein. So you think that Shelley and them didn't know what was going on and stuff, but they literally wove this out of tales that had gone from before. Dracula, out of something totally different, which you're probably aware of, and Vlad Dracul and everything, and these tales that come through it, and these other folklore, and blend it together, and werewolves and so on. But this has a connection actually to old Jewish folklore and everything. So as a result, Rabbi Lowe removed the name of God from the golem whenever it became terrible. This was the way for him to stop it. In the other version, it got Wicker Man. But he removed the name of God off of him, and it just turned him off, like taking the stone away, thus turning it back into a lifeless statue. Some believe that the golem was hidden by the rabbi in the attic of his synagogue. In addition, the entrance of the attic was forbidden for centuries, and the stairs of the area were removed. But when the synagogue was finally explored hundreds of years later, there was no trace of anything resembling a golem. But had there ever been? There's a good question. So here's a totem of a golem. And in my D&D game that we play, we have this thing with this totem and golem, and they have this thing that looks like a maypole, and it has to do with trolls and ogres and things, and then you figure out what went on in real history and how that would play out if that was real, and oh no, wow. Yeah, it shows you some things. So here's a golem, but albeit this little guy ain't very big at all, but he keeps coming at you, little robot, right? And so nowadays we could have something that's a robot that would take this place. And another echo. The legacy of golems. In most stories, golems are described as male in appearance and were made to help save Jewish people. But even if there was an unfortunate end to the story, however, there's a few notable legends about female golems as well. For example, a rabbi named Horowitz is said to have allegedly created a beautiful silent golem for him to have sex with. And we see nowadays that people are talking about, hey, there was a blow-up doll at first, just to be straightforward with you. But now they've got these little robotic girls. Yeah. If you've ever seen any of this stuff. But this was not as common as stories about female golems, though, being created as maid servants that would cook and clean and do chores or something else. Albeit that probably both are taking place in some way. Golems are such prominent figures in Jewish legend that they continue to inspire artists and writers to this day. For at least the past 200 years, these creatures have made their way into paintings, sculpture, illustration, and more recently video and the digital artwork. They still have an air of fascination and magic about them, but also remind us to question what really means to be human. And there's the humanistic tale that's still left within Frankenstein. And a lot of people, you can psychologically pick it all apart and everything, how our compassion led to do that. But then in the oath, if we look at it a different way, that there was an oath one time, it was in a village, and he was really about a second grader in mentality, and they castrated him as a eunuch and kept him and had him do manual labor for everybody and things. But eventually something got out of hand, and then they ended up ceremoniously and sadly realizing that they had caused their own problem due to their own compassions. And the ideal left behind was that the only thing that made it fair and safe was to kill him off. And that sounds terrible. Well, he killed this girl. And, well, he didn't mean, oh yeah, I understand. But, yes, he did. She started screaming and he just killed her straightforward, trying to get her to stop making noise. But if somebody that's in faculties kills somebody, they can be killed themselves legally as part of our laws. But if they did it when they're crazy, we're supposed to just keep them around, right? That is the Caucasian capacity for caring for something. Finding an animal with 3 legs, and instead of just euthanizing it so it doesn't have a hard life, trying to give it as good a life as you can give it. And I'm not saying that we should, kill off retarded or autistic people in any way, shape, or form, people. I'm just comparing what was said by the ancient Bible people and a way of showing you that this type of thing echoes through time. And though they kind of mentioned Frankenstein, they didn't go into it much, and the mummy and the concept and how you can get all of that out of it. They also don't mention that whenever they're supposedly forming a man out of clay and doing this ritual, they're trying to play God. We play God to this day, keeping people alive. My dad had a pacemaker in his chest, and it was the only reason we were able to, at the end, to talk to him, because he would have died. In fact, when he went in to have it checked and everything went through, he said, "You died twice, but it brought you back to life. What did you do after here?" And he goes, "Well, I went to the bathroom, and then I made a sandwich." And the guy just smiled like, isn't it amazing this little clicker ticker was able to do that and get you back going and carry you through? We still didn't feel like we had closure because they kept feeling like they'd be able to do something and fix the problem. And they took him and put him sedated, and he never was able to come back out of it because they couldn't quit him having a heart attack. They tried to get it in there and make it twitch and really do his heartbeat, but it's not something that they could have done with that. Since then, because of my dad's problem, they have ended up making it to where he can do it successfully. So things come out of advancements, but how much longer would my father have gone on, and will we still had that moment? It's hard to have closure, losing your parents, and the fact of life and death, and I realize that, especially as I get older here in life. But the idea of creating a golem, whether it's a person like in the Lord of the Rings that is distraught and beset with one certain thing so bad, you could say it's drugs or this or that or whatever. You can find people that have obsessed to the point that it changed them to the core into something else. But in other ways, the same tale shows this reflection of trying to play God, of the people that wrote the book, and trying to do exactly what he did and recreate it. Anyhow, like, share, and subscribe, guys, and enjoy. Just one more showing here of the reality of it all, and how whenever I tell you things are all around you and you know them and understand them and have heard all about them, sometimes it just takes somebody to make the little connection and you realize there's more to that. You probably have more than that also. Write down in the comments below about it. Let me know what you think. For Golum is an inanimate person, but Goyim tries to be turned into the Golem of the Lord of the Rings. Knock knock. Peace.